But perhaps let's let our audience who have joined us virtually perhaps lead in these discussions. And Dr. Patrick, I'd like to come to you first, as you take the first shot of setting the scene here. We're here, we're told, to address a challenge, a skills gap in the critical raw material sector. We're also here, we have been told, to seize an opportunity of enabling the sector to create the Africa and the world that we'd like to see. So perhaps your opening thoughts on the critical raw mineral sector as you see it right now, and the size of the gap as you see it, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So, yes, what I want to do is, first of all, to thank the organizers of the meeting for, convening such a timely meeting in a critical time for Africa. What we have to do is to, first of all, put, the issue on perspective. The first thing we have to underline is that Africa will become, in the next decades to come, the global, workforce of the world, because, the population of the continent is growing. We now have a population of a size of 1.4 billion people, with an expected population that can grow at 2.5 or 2.7 billion people, depending on the data. Now, when you look at the landscape, you also see that the continent is endowed with rich mineral resources that are essential for paving the way to sustainable development and to even green growth. And in that perspective, for the African Union, it is important that our countries embrace, transformative changes that are allowing them to put in place, the right policy frameworks that are, needed to design the policies of the future, but also to take advantage of the potential that we have. And in that perspective, building the skills of our population becomes one of the critical, challenge that we are facing. Because the data that we have as we speak today are underscoring that if the African population is upskilled in the way that is needed, we will certainly be able to unlock the potential of the continent in terms of economic growth. Because the growth that we have today, which is approximately 4.1%, in the year 2024, is supposed, in fact, to be, a potential growth that is ranging about 7 to 10% if we are to achieve Agenda 2063, our transformative development plan. And in this perspective, aligning skills with the job market and also the requirement of the private sector becomes essential to make sure that we are able to take advantage of the critical minerals that we are endowed with. And in that, we can see that there are already policy frameworks that are in place, notably the African Mining Vision that is bringing African countries to design the right policies that are suitable to unlock the mineral sector potential as a source of growth. And in this, there is need for us to implement national and regional strategies that are based on reliable national and regional data that are also anchored to the demand that the market is expressing today. I'm just taking one example. If you look at the critical minerals that are needed to unlock the potential of the electric vehicle battery chain, you can see that Africa is at the center of that transformative process, but there is need for us to put in place the right policy frameworks that are able to unlock the potential of that particular sector. And in this, skills are essential because the skills that we are developing and that we are equipping our population with will certainly drive the innovative changes that we are looking forward. And this applies also to the technological advance that we need to put in place to make sure that we are able to take advantage of that huge market.
Okay.
And when you look at the data, you can see that if we sustainably invest in skills in the strategic sectors of critical minerals, we will unlock the potential of Africa's growth by the next century ahead of us. So there is need for us to focus on that we are able to, to stimulate the cooperation between the public and the private sector to make sure that this cooperation in technological and vocational training is able to unlock the potential of that regional value chains that we want to build.
Okay.
And in that, international cooperation is critical because it will allow us, to take advantage of the potential of that market. But most importantly, we need to be conscious of the fact that the future of the continent lies on the opportunity of harnessing our critical mineral resources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. And I'm hoping that throughout the discussion we can also better define what we mean by sustainable investments in critical raw minerals.
Okay.
to unlock the potential. And we'll get there, Dr. Patrick, sir, in hopefully the second round of questions. Antonio, good morning, to bring you in as well. I'm just reminded by the conversation that we had before this session when we were preparing for it, and the importance you emphasized on us just being simple in our definitions and just defining and showing really clearly what we mean by these skills that are critical. We have heard that we're talking about extraction, we're talking about refining, and we're talking about the distribution thereof. We've heard mention of the electric cars here in the room. We've heard mention of the solar panels and all the other digital and electronical devices that will benefit from the results of the minerals that are mined here. Of course, all that value add presently not happening on the continent. But perhaps just talk to us, sir, about the skills, how we should be looking at the skills value chain, as it were, and the strategies that you see that are available for us to build on the linkages and the value unlock across the chain.
Sure, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I think this is a very important conversation, and I'm pleased you stressed this first point around how do we understand really critical minerals and as a result of that, the skills that are needed in the different type of stages of value chain, processing, and so on. The first issue is that when we talk about critical minerals, we are talking about a huge variety of different type of potential industrial materials that enter in very different type of value chains. So in a sense, we need to be aware of the heterogeneity of the huge differences when we talk about mining of graphite, rare earths, or nickel, manganese, lithium, and so on. And in many cases, of course, we know that there are lots of companion minerals. So effectively, in the same mining site, we have different processing activities going on. Now, we also need to be aware that while we know that the demand for this mineral is growing, the chemistries, for example, of batteries for vehicles is also changing. So the combinations of how these minerals are going to enter into new technologies is something that we need to be aware of. Things are not set in stone. Technologies constantly evolve while we speak. Now, this kind of variety of minerals also call for a different amount of opportunities for African countries and related skills that are needed. Let's try to see what kind of stream of opportunities are there and how to leverage the skills that are required. Well, first of all, there are several opportunities or direct impact that investment in critical minerals can have, right? If we talk about simply processing of some of these minerals, of course, the first question that has to come to our mind is what is more important, the proximity to the source where the mineral is, or the proximity to the market? And we know that up to certain stages, in particular stages of early precursors, so pre-processed and ready processed for industrial production of materials, these activities can actually be located closer to the source of the minerals. So in a sense, that is a low-hanging fruit. There is possibility to start moving down early stages of the value chain to build some of these linkages. And of course, here the more traditional skills processing capabilities have to be built. But there are also other opportunities which are going towards both downstream and the upstream part of this value chain. So for example, there are countries across Africa, also in North Africa, where there has been an increasing emphasis on thinking about developing skills for recycling of batteries or for repurposing of batteries. And this, of course, links back to the broader activities around production, manufacturing, and repurposing of these key components. There are countries like South Africa, for example, that have built over the years huge capacity in mining equipment. So you can have opportunities upstream. And again, when we look at upstream part and supply of technology, supply of construction materials, supply of several inputs into, including digital technologies, into the mining sector, again, there are more opportunities for Africa to be an active player and increase the domestic value addition in these activities. There are, of course, also indirect opportunity, which are related to, traditional fiscal linkages, the amount of resources that governments can mobilize by extracting royalties and partnering with companies in the extraction processing of these activities. Now, leveraging, harnessing these direct, indirect opportunities and related linkages into the economy is what is going to drive the demand for new skills. And I'm emphasizing this issue because while Africa needs huge amount of skills, at the same time we need to be aware that there is a sort of tendency for a supply side bias in the conversation, as if we just create the skills and everything is going to happen. Actually, it's a much more organic process where to create skills, it's important to provide, in particular the youth, with opportunities for good employment in these sectors and related sectors through linkages, because otherwise the risk is, of course, that we create skilled people that then leave the countries, and because there are not enough good opportunities for them to be employed. Okay. Now, in this context of creating skills, the big issue here is how do we reform lots of vocational training institutions to make them more capable to provide the skills that are needed, and the very specific skills in these different activities I mentioned. And we know across Africa there are issues around financing of skills institutions that have to be looked at. There are lots of models related to skills levy. For example, we have worked both in South Africa and Tanzania in looking at models that allow better financing of vocational training institutions, while at the same time more partnership between training institutions and companies, which in some cases boils down to the design of the skills training, to the skills profiles, on the job training activities that are involved. So very hands-on engagement that provide the kind of right skills that are needed.
Sure.
Let me also add one last point, and sometimes it's not just skilling people, it's also skilling companies to use and to employ people in an effective way. Because also we need to realize that there is a big gap in terms of organizational capabilities alongside the value chains. So skills for people, but also skills for organization, firms, supplier in sustainable value chains.
Fantastic points, and we're going to be hearing a little bit more about those points, particularly the skills for the companies in one of the sessions that are happening a little later, Antonio, as well as the reforms of the TEVETs, the financing challenges that perhaps they are going through, but also how they are thinking of better aligning their programs with what is needed in the private sector. We'll be hearing there's a session that's allocated to that, some part during the course of the day. But Virpi, I want to bring you in as UNIDO, one of our hosts for this conference. Thank you so much. Just for us to understand exactly what you are doing right now and how UNIDO is seeing the opportunity for skills development in the sector.
Thank you so much. I would like to point out the fact that we are facing a double skills gap currently. And you mentioned the COP29 happening this week. I also wanted to refer to a recent report called State of the World's Climate that showed that 25 out of 35 of planet's vital signs showed record high levels this year.
Sure. Okay.
And record high means bad in this case, so
yeah.
record high temperatures, for example. And for this, we need to decarbonize and we need to digitalize, and for this we need the critical raw materials. And of course, this gives an opportunity for these resource-rich countries, as Zambia and in many other African countries. So there is the demand and there is the opportunity, but since we are talking about extractive industries, we are of course facing these environmental and social practices that not have been always done in a responsible manner. And this brings the issue of standards and sustainability standards. So we are now facing a change in the landscape of the critical raw materials. So we are moving from voluntary sustainability standards to mandatory compliance. And this basically points out the second skills gap that we are currently facing. So the World Economic Forum stated, as we heard from our Director General, that 70% of mining companies cannot find the technical skills needed for the critical raw materials sector. But the World Economic Forum also found out that 94% of CEOs globally cannot find the skills to implement their sustainability agenda. And furthermore, they also found out that 150 million people need to be trained on sustainability skills by 2030. So that's what I mean by the double skills gap. It's the technical skills gap, but it's also the sustainability skills gap, because these are equally important skills. And the way UNIDO is working, I can give you an example of a recent case in Guinea-Conakry, and we have Alteo Alumina here in the audience, and we have recently started to work with a group who is investing in a refinery in a country in Guinea, and UNIDO is helping in terms of the skills development that are required to refine bauxite into alumina. But we are also looking at the broader opportunities of this investment in terms of the surrounding skills. So it's not only the skills that are needed in the refinery, but also the mechatronics, the services, the forklift operators, and the sustainability skills that are equally important. So basically there is a demand, there is an opportunity, there is a skills gap, and UNIDO can help to bridge this gap with the government and private sector entities.
All right, no, fantastic. And so essentially you've just made us realize that the skills gap that we're talking about is a lot bigger than perhaps many of us had thought. And then Cleophas, maybe bringing you here, because we've just heard that not only is there a deficit in terms of the skills of workers needed in the extraction, perhaps even you can say the refining and all that process. There's also a huge deficit amongst the industry leaders in the C-suite who are making the decisions in the boardroom about how to actually implement sustainability across their value chains. So there's a deficit all around, and perhaps maybe you can just give us the perspective of what's happening here in Zambia, one of the hot spots for the critical minerals corner, and how your organization is experiencing the current skills landscape. Are you seeing it as challenging? Do you see the opportunities, and how are you as an organization trying to solve for it?
Thank you very much. My name is Cleophas Takaiza. I'm the Director General of TEVETA, and TEVETA is the authority that is mandated to regulate and coordinate skills development in this country. And the issue of skills gaps is a matter that is always presented to us each time there's a forum where we have stakeholders, especially industry, exchanging with us on their challenges that they face as they want to recruit for the jobs in their companies. Now, I also just want to say that this topic couldn't have come at a better time than now, because the mining industry in this country, I think, is looking up. And also, when we look at the global demand for critical resources, like the ones we are discussing here, such as lithium, rare earth elements, I think the growth is also looking up. But again, we see that most of these critical mineral resources, most of them are being extracted from this part of the world. So if we are to benefit from the investments that are being put in this sector, and later on the subsector of the critical minerals, we need to have the right skills so that we can realize responsible and sustainable practices. Otherwise, while things, the minerals are being extracted from the ground and they are being shipped, there are so many risks that we may face, apart from just the risk of not having the jobs benefiting our own young people here. People from outside would come and get those jobs, but also even just the risks that remain after the extraction has been done. Now, as an institution that is responsible for skills development, we also realize that and share this realization that we all need to be interested in the right skills, meaning skilling. We also need to participate in upskilling or reskilling, because everyone benefits out of this. As individual young persons, once you have the right skill, you increase your employability chances, but also the health of the community. But also, as business entities, we all must be interested in skilling and upskilling our people, because it will boost business productivity and competitiveness. But as a country, we are also glad that the government is also placing a premium on TEVETA, because it realizes that actually it's the skills that drive economic growth. Now, what is it that TEVETA is doing to address this issue of the skills gap? We have also seen and realized the fact that I think as a government agency, and with these training institutions that we regulate, on our own, we can't actually address and solve this skills challenge, because even as we develop or refine curriculum, if we don't closely engage private sector, the employers, and all other people that have an interest in this, we'll be shooting at a moving target. By the time we are launching a curriculum, things have moved. Even after we have launched a revised or a new curriculum, maybe our institutions are not able to deliver it because it requires new equipment, it requires staff upgrading. So we saw the importance of partnerships with industries. And we are glad through our partners like UNIDO, for example. Just yesterday in this same building, we were also having a meeting with the ILO through a project that is supported by the EU. We have a project that is looking at skills development for increased employability. And within that project, the mining industry, the mining sector has been given support and the priority there, where we are actually developing a skills development strategy for the mining sector. And one of the elements or the components of that project is to establish mechanisms of anticipating skills requirements for the future. But also, we have also been assessing what are the capacity gaps amongst our training providers, but also strengthening private sector and training institutional participation. And in that context, we are actually in the process of establishing what we are calling a mining sector skills advisory group, which is a sector skills body that is going to be guiding us on how we must move to ensure that we are in line with what the mining industry wants, including the skills that will be relevant for these critical mineral resources.
Work and attention that's
Yes.
been placed by organization. And so we'll come to you again in just a short while. I know that you are not finished with your responses.
Yes.
But just to bring Mulenga in, so when I arrived, got to the hotel, saw a newspaper sitting on in the reception area, and the newspaper had the main article being the return or potential return of Anglo-American back into Zambia. CEO is here, met with the president, and they were talking about, you know, the potential and the possibility of doing a deal differently. And it reminded me, and I was telling some of the colleagues at UNIDO, it reminded me of some of the action that has been happening in South Africa. So every year, South Africa hosts a private organization hosts the Africa Mining Indaba in South Africa. And for the past 2 years or so, Zambia has been the poster child of new mining, and a lot of attention being bestowed on Zambia. We've heard deals from the Middle East as well. There's been deals from other foreign companies who are looking at you because of what you have to offer. So maybe just give us your intake as a private player. What is your experience of what the skills landscape is looking like right now? I don't want to just not being ignorant of the fact that the skills gap is a huge challenge, but perhaps we're experiencing differently based on where we are sitting in the room. So as First Quantum Minerals, what is your experience of the skills landscape right now, and how are you trying to solve for any challenges you are encountering?
Thank you so much. As First Quantum, when we look at the skills gap in the mining industry, we look at it from, first of all, the extractive perspective, which is the general mining itself, all the way up to the processing. So it's across the value chain for the mining industry. And we tend to find that the skills gaps that are missing are very obvious skills gap. The skills gap where, for example, TEVETA or TEVETA institutes can actually have a big impact in sorting out our problems. We are finding that when we look at curriculum and we look at the way that the industry has evolved and advanced over the years, the two are not matching. When you look at technological advancements in mining, and the reason for that obviously is that mining is being pushed to deliver a product more sustainably, more cost effective, and of course in a safe environment. Because of that, the way that we do our business has completely changed. But we're finding that our TEVETA partners are lagging behind in terms of curriculum. You find that even when they are providing young students with the skill set, it is not quite matching what is on the ground. If I can give an example of just a heavy equipment repair technician, this is a person that is coming from a TEVETA institute and has a mechanical disposition or a mechanical background. However, when that person comes into industry, they find that the equipment that they're working on has so far moved technologically that now our equipment is hybrided. So this equipment that the heavy equipment repair technician is working on has got both mechanical and electrical components. The person is coming from a purely mechanical background and therefore cannot cope with the electrical side. So we are finding that as time goes on, and for us to be able to meet the demands, we need to have a hybrided workforce. I noticed, Virpi, you mentioned the combination of mechatronics, which is exactly what it is that we're looking for in the workplace as well. Our heavy equipment repair technicians need to have a component of mechanical as well as electrical for them to be effective for us. It goes even just beyond that. If you look at a simple operator that comes in to drive our heavy equipment, this operator is coming from industries that is being taught how to drive an ADT, for an example. When they come into our industry, again, because our equipment is hybrided, the person knows how to drive the truck, but does not have the appreciation of troubleshooting on a computerized system. Then there is a gap there. So that is what we're seeing from the TEVETA schools. Small things that we can collaborate and work together and really close the gap. I'm happy that TEVETA involves private institutions such as ourselves when it comes to curriculum development, But I believe that we can go a step further in terms of the collaboration. You know, one of the things that is also quite critical for us along the mining value chain as well is the maintenance of our equipment. So I talked about a heavy equipment repair technician, but also along the processing side, we are finding that again the lack of mechanics, sorry, not mechanics, but fitters, mechanical fitters, electrical fitters, to actually troubleshoot has become a hindrance in the way that we operate our business. So just these little small tweaks to the curriculum that will be able to prepare the graduate coming into industry a little bit better would be much appreciated.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. As we move to the second round of questions, Dr. Patrick, I'd like to come to you once again, just speaking on behalf of the African Union, who champion One Africa and whose vision, of course, is for the continent to be better united across all value streams and across all sectors. So what role in that context, sir, do you reckon that regional and global actors should be playing right now in building the critical raw minerals supply chain across Africa in a way that fosters a greater collaboration across the board?
We are absolutely convinced that international cooperation, but more importantly, regional cooperation should be strengthened within the continent. And in that perspective, we have been working with UNIDO to make sure that we are able to unlock the potential of regional and continental value chains within the continent. But there are concrete examples of successful, regional value chains that have been developed and that has contributed, to enhancing the skills and upgrading the possibility to countries to seize and maximize the opportunities of their critical minerals. I want to take the example of Botswana with the diamond beneficiation program that they have put in place, which has contributed to upgrading the skills, of people working in the mining sector, but also providing the opportunity for those people to contribute effectively to creating the wealth that the country is, creating as they are moving forward in their economic spheres. The second point is about the cooperation between countries that we are encouraging within the African Union. And for that, I can take the example of Zambia and DRC that have developed, a regional value chain or a value chain on the cobalt industry. And there you can see that the cooperation with those two countries, within those two countries, has been able and is able, to create the right space for skills development and for mutual beneficiation of the value that is created. These are concrete examples. We can also look at the example of, South Africa and Zimbabwe that have put together a steel industry that has contributed, to upgrading the skills and creating the wealth in the two countries. These are just little examples that we are thinking of, upgrading at the continental level, because we are looking at not less than 94, regional value chains that can be, created and developed to make sure that we are able to maximize the gains of the African continental free trade area. Because what we think is that creating an integrated market, calls for, harnessing the potential of our countries in terms of the opportunities that, regional value chains can create. And for this, we are absolutely convinced that it is important to invest in skills. And when you look at the contribution of regional collaboration between countries in terms of, creating the skills that are needed to spearhead structural transformation, you can see that there is a huge potential that is yet untapped and that needs to be maximized. On international cooperation, what the African Union, and I conclude with that,
sure,
is usually calling for is to make sure that international cooperation works for developing, transformative process within the continent. And in that perspective, we are absolutely convinced that if we can spearhead, productive transformation in the continent, maximizing the opportunities that are provided by our critical minerals, we will be able to unlock Africa's growth potential and certainly pave the way to green transition as we are looking forward. So the African Union is working on that, and we do hope that with the support of international partners, but also the private sector and the academic sector, we will be able to create the right space for skilling our population the right way to achieve productive transformation. Over to you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for providing those examples, just showing us that it can be done, it is being done, and to the point that you have mentioned that the African Union is looking at ways to amplify it. You have cited a lot of opportunity, and we do look forward to the outcomes of your actions that you're taking to amplify those examples of better regional cooperation to strengthen the CRMs. Cleophas, perhaps maybe if I can also just bring it back to you and just talk about your amplification efforts as a TEVETA. We heard from your colleague whom you are working with about 1 or 2 tweaks that could be done in 1 or 2 areas just to give you a greater effect and also greater scale. Perhaps you can just talk to us about that, and maybe also on your end, maybe what other 1 or 2 tweaks that could be helpful in your relationship with government, with other industry and private stakeholders in making what you are doing a little bit more impactful.
Thank you very much. What we have agreed in the strategy for skills development, and this is again being done in agreement with the key stakeholders. We have all realized that we need to strengthen relevance of TVET. And with that, we have also realized that we need to encourage private sector participation in all the processes. Because after all, we are training for industry. And industry they know what they want. And we must give them what they want. And we have also realized and decided that we need to deliver a demand-led curriculum. Now, how is this going to be achieved? It comes back now to the issue of collaboration that I think my colleague here said. We need to continue to strengthen collaboration in every stage of the skills development value chain. From skills identification, to the design of the curriculum. We haven't seen a lot of industry participating or playing active roles in the actual delivery of the curriculum. We don't want to convert companies into training centers, all of them, no. But what we are saying is that, yes, the training providers will do their role. They have limitations, we all know, in terms of the tools and equipment that they have. But industry also must be willing to offer these learners an opportunity to at least experience what it looks like to be in a work environment. Not only students, but also even the trainers themselves.
Yes.
Maybe once in a while, lecturers from a college like here at Vocational could be given an opportunity to come in industry and also have an experience of what it is to be in industry. Because what we have realized is that sometimes when students go into industry, those that are lucky, the few that are lucky, they come well informed now that they begin to challenge the lecturer who is so, who is back in the technology that is obtaining in industry. But it's not the fault of the lecturer because the lecturer hasn't been given an opportunity. But let me also hasten to say that actually government has authorized and allowed that we transform the way TVET is going to be delivered going forward. We are now seeing the TVET Act being reviewed to introduce competence-based teaching and learning, including assessment. But that will require also industry very active participation because it is industry who must develop the competence standards that must be complied with at all levels.
Okay.
So there are many things. In fact, it's for that reason that actually Zambia decided to join World Skills International if I may proceed that direction.
Sure.
It is a way of transforming our TVET system for this country. World Skills International is a global organization that believes in placing skills in the right framework, because actually skills transform and drive economic growth world over. But in this part of the world, we realize that each one of us would only recommend that their child goes to a TVET school if they have failed going to university, which shouldn't be the case. Because it should be by choice that a child should be encouraged to pick up a skill of their choice and let them be encouraged to do that. Now, by joining World Skills International, this is an international body that actually offers an opportunity for countries to benchmark standards, so that even as you prepare to go for international skills competitions, the idea is not really just to end up with a medal, but in the process, we have a lot of capacity building and benchmarking that goes on, organized by World Skills International, who have compiled all these international occupational standards, which can be shared, and the capacity building programs also shared amongst all the member countries. So, as Zambia, the government allowed it that I think this is the way we are going to transform and raise the profile of skills.
Okay.
So we are going to host that event next year in August. We would like industry to come on board because it's a big event. We also want to give an opportunity to youngsters to come and see and experience what it is if they choose a TVET skill as a career option.
Okay. Feel free to invite me back for that one as well. And sorry, and sorry to rush you, so I'm just mindful of time. And I think that on the other side of that equation is not necessarily just parents placing a higher premium on TEVET qualifications, but also the corporate sector leveling the playing field in how they review TEVET qualifications versus university qualifications. And so just, as I said, looking at the fact that time has run fast past us, I'd like for us to start moving into some concluding remarks to wrap up this discussion. And Antonio, just to bring you in here also with your final thoughts. Your colleague on the virtual line, Dr. Patrick, made reference to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area deal a little earlier. And it's a question then to you in terms of how critical the development of the critical raw minerals value chain is for Africa's trade and economic positioning globally. And if critical, I mean, what are the low-hanging fruits that we can get to realize it more speedily, sir? Antonio, you are on mute, I believe, or your sound hasn't come through to us as yet.
I think there is a lag because I'm not on mute.
All right, okay, I can hear you now. Apologies for that.
I can hear you.
Yeah,
okay.
Excellent. I was just saying, I think this is a fascinating conversation because we are touching both the macro institutional issues that make skills development possible, but also, as I mentioned before, in order to transform these skills into jobs and in more inclusive outcomes, we need to have markets and value chains that expand the scale and the opportunities for investment. And of course, many of the minerals we are talking about are critical in different ways for different countries. In countries in the African continent, all sorts of minerals, given the need for infrastructure investment, for example, minerals like copper are critical if we want to build up an infrastructure that is able to harness the renewable potential and feed industries that will be located in these countries. So minerals can be critical in different ways. There are lots of minerals that for the time being are an important leverage, especially if they are leveraged, as the example was made, as regional value chains investments opportunities to attract new investors and commit these investors into locating processing activities and downstream stages of the value chain into the continent. So integrating markets is an important dimension. So we know that there are challenges in doing that, especially because many African countries have not developed trade complementarities yet, which means that they struggle to benefit as now, given their productive structure, from this integration, and there are also some resistances in that respect. But the critical minerals could be one of those areas where first opportunities like the one we mentioned around cobalt or other type of minerals could be leveraged. When we look at trade data, it seems that a few countries which have some chemical processing capabilities have become major hubs for continental value chains, and they are becoming a hub for re-exporting into the international market. So the private sector is already building up some of these regional value chain. It's a matter of not simply leaving these value chains to the level of transferring and trade, but also grounding these opportunities into real investment on the ground, and from the government to use industrial policy and regional industrial policy as a way of anchoring investment through local content requirements that have to be feasible given the supply capabilities that exist across African countries, but nonetheless that have to incrementally create more conditions for investment and demand for high quality skills.
All right. No, thank you, sir. Thanks so much for that. And so with the access to markets and increased opportunities regionally and internationally come the perhaps opportunity and even the complexity to have to meet new regulations and standards to operate in those markets. So Virpi, it's a question then for you as UNIDO to say, how are you supporting companies in navigating these increasingly complex but necessary, in some parts, regulatory terrains?
Thank you so much for the question. I wanted to mention first that the TEVETA system, as was mentioned by the colleague from TEVETA, changes linearly, whereas the industry changes exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
So there is always this lack and gap between the skills that the TEVETA system is offering and the industry needs. And for this, the keyword is co-creation of training programs. And UNIDO has been doing for the past more than 10 years through the Learning and Knowledge Development Facility with the help of Swedish government, these co-creation processes where we can quickly react to changes in the industry. And the example here is the sustainability-driven regulations. The LKDF brought together companies that were interested in this particular topic and co-created a training program that doesn't necessarily yet have the accreditation of the national institutes, but can be used for reskilling or upskilling multinational companies, suppliers, for example. And often the accreditation process for this kind of short courses when it comes to upskilling or reskilling are lighter. And this is the way to really, I know that agility is the buzzword, but it is really the way to agilely react to changes in industry needs.
Sure. Especially given how quickly they are happening.
Indeed, and actually this sustainability curricula, this is only a teaser because there will be a launch later on in the program today, so stay tuned.
Okay.
Don't leave us.
All right, no, fantastic. So we look forward to hearing a little bit more about the sustainability curricula. Mulenga, I'm going to ask you to close us off. I do think it's a little bit dated for us to still be highlighting first woman achievements in 2024 that we're in, but nonetheless, the balance is still unfortunately not as even in level as it should be, and I think that would be remiss for us to not also apply a gender lens in your experience on what we're trying to achieve here. in building the critical raw materials sector and the resiliency thereof. Can you apply a gender view to how we should be looking at doing this better?
Thank you so much for that question. It's one, you know, the gender question is one that I keep getting asked a lot, especially after coming into this position. Yes, I am the first female training manager at First Quantum Trident Limited. I'm also the first female manager for First Quantum Trident Limited. So it just so happens that I'm the first training manager, but also the first female manager. I sit on a table with 22 other colleagues that are all, thank you. I sit on a table, you know, with 22 other colleagues that are male, and it makes for a very different dynamics when we talk about skills development. You know, it saddens me when I think about how, when we talk about STEM curriculum, we only focus on the male gender and we don't focus on the female gender. However, in the mining industry, what we do know is that when we talk about safe and sustainable practices within the mining industry, you tend to find that a lot of our accidents are actually geared towards the male gender than the female gender. So it's actually better for mining companies, if there are any here, to employ women than it is to employ men. Beyond that, but beyond that also, you know, when you have an inclusive environment, and it's not just from a gender perspective, but it's from all walks of life. When you have an inclusive environment, you tend to find that it sparks a lot of innovation, it sparks a lot of discussions around sustainability, around safe practices, and so on and so forth. It is, like I started, it is quite sad that we do not include the female voice when we're talking about STEM curriculum. And we discourage our female generation, if I can call it that, or our female people that can actually come into the workforce to take up STEM courses. But I tend to find that there's so much room for everybody, but also that if we encouraged more female participation, it would actually even give a more broad-based discussion, but even more interest to the male participation that are actually shunning TEVETA institutes, saying, I want to go in a different direction. Because I think in Zambia, the buzzwords is, you know, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer. We are forgetting that there's a lot of emphasis on TEVET courses. And in fact, if I can brag a little bit about First Quantum, we pay you more when you're coming from a TEVET institute than when you're coming from another background. So I mean, just encouraging, if there are any young people in the forum today, and if you've not gotten your qualification yet, please veer towards the TEVET qualifications, because there's a real big market. What we're also seeing from industry is that beyond even just our Zambian market, we find that, and that's another discussion I think for Mr. Cleophas and I to seriously have, is that we are finding that because Africa, and especially Zambia, is the hub of mining, we are losing to other industries, I mean other global markets that are just opening up where mining is concerned. Yeah. We as, if I can speak on behalf of government here, please forgive me. If I can speak on behalf of government, we really need, as Zambia, to take advantage of that situation. Because if we're already losing skill set to the diaspora, surely there's somewhere we can benefit, even if it's curriculum development, if it's leading the conversation as to how we can do this. Because it's very frustrating for us at First Quantum, where we bring in a person from a TEVETA Institute that has the foundation, the good foundation from TEVETA. We build upon that to give them the technological advances that we have. And before you know it, this person is exiting and going to the diaspora. How can we sort the problem out between the TEVETA Institute and ourselves so that we can have a pipeline and maybe sell Zambia as a pipeline hub for TEVETA curriculum? I'm so happy that, for example, the heavy equipment repair diploma is one of the first of its kind within Africa. You know, we've had so much, because we're doing the diploma at First Quantum, we've had so much spotlighting of what it is that we're doing there. And just to also conclude, I know that Mr. Cleophas also said that he was interested in just, and we were having this conversation as well with my colleagues, where we were saying that it would be good to host lecturers, trainers in the TEVETA institutes to come into our organization, throw them into the workshop so that they can understand some of our challenges when we're talking about the machinery, when we start to say that we need somebody that is mechanically and electrically well-versed like that. So again, to take it back to the gender conversation, sorry I digressed a little bit, but to take it back to the gender conversation, there's a lot of emphasis even within First Quantum for the woman in the workplace.
Sure.
Because we recognize that they are careful, they are a lot more risk averse, and they treat the machinery like their children. It's perfect.
I think we are just hoping that next time we meet, it's more than you, verse 22, on your board. We have come to the end of our session, but the organizers have let me know that we still have a good timing for one parting shot from all of you. And can I just ask that we just be mindful of the 1 minute that we have been given each, just to wrap up and perhaps extend a call to action from to your colleagues who are seated here. Antonio, you still with us?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you, and also Dr. Patrick. So we're just saying in one minute or less, just your final thoughts to wrap up this scene setter, sir.
Well, maybe I go ahead. I think the main issue here is we have touched upon several dimensions, several opportunities, but we need to start thinking about policies that are able to harness all these different opportunities and that are feasible in the different countries across the continent. We cannot just look at skills policy or investment policy or energy policy and so on as separate entities. We need an integrated industrial policy approach which allows us to really streamline this value chain, putting skills at the center of the new kind of industrial policy proposition that governments, countries can put forward, and really make sure that through skills, industrialization is really an opportunity for inclusive and sustainable structural transformation in the countries.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Antonio. Dr. Patrick?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and just to sincerely thank all the co-panelists for the excellent point they have been raising. I just want to stress one point. The economic potential of Africa, relies on our ability to create the base of skills that is needed. Because as I said in my preliminary word, Africa is endowed with 1.4 billion people today, with an expected 2.7 billion people in just 2 decades. And that population will constitute 25% of the global workforce. And for this, it is important that we invest, in the right skills that are needed to spearhead productive transformation. Just a figure, if we invest in skills today, it is expected that our GDP could increase in the next decade towards a century by about 154 trillion US dollars if we do the right things. And for this, you can see that skills development remain at the center of our economic transformation. And they are also central if we are to spearhead industrialization, as just said Antonio in his concluding words, because this is where we're going to create the massive jobs that we need. And this is where we're going to generate the growth potential that we want to unlock to position Africa as a global growth pole in the global arena. So that is what we are convinced of. And this is why the African Union is partnering with all the institutions that are relevant and also all the stakeholders to make sure that we are able to seize that monumental opportunity of unlocking Africa's potential through right skills as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patrick, also for putting a monetary value on the potential economic multiplier of doing the right thing. Mulenga, in a minute or less, your parting shot?
Thank you so much. I think for me, it's just the emphasis of collaboration between the private sector and the TEVETA institutes when it comes to curriculum development. As someone coming from the private sector, we are very much interested and actually looking forward to working with institutes of higher learning, such as TEVETA and all the other TEVETA institutes as well, to collaborate and to work in partnership to better improve the curriculum so that we can ensure that we have a pipeline of able-bodied young people that are coming into the industry.
Okay, thank you so much. Virpi, final thoughts from you?
I'm repeating a lot, but the double skills gap it's a challenge, but it can be turned into an opportunity by co-creating training programs, and UNIDO through the LKDF is here to help everybody who is interested in doing that.
Okay. And there'll be plenty of opportunity, I'm sure, to interact with yourselves and your team members about that help for anyone who does will to have it. Last but not least, you, sir. Cleophas, what are you leaving us with?
Thank you. Not necessarily to repeat what has been said already, but I think for us, we are very grateful that for this platform, we are still calling for more collaboration. We are here to save this economy, and the key players in this economy is the industry. So let's sit together, let's discuss, let's find a way of strengthening this collaboration so that we can serve you better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thanks so much to all of you for beautifully and aptly setting the scene. Can we please give them a warm round of applause for their insights?